second chance in the game.
To be here tonight. My name is Mike Berner. I'm the offensive coordinator at Mahomet-Seymour High School. You can see my contact info on here. I have a little bit of a coordinator experience listed here. Offensive coordinator in 2018, defensive coordinator in 2019, now offensive coordinator for the last few years. Only reason I put that on here is if you're a young guy watching and you think you're an offensive guy or you think you're a defensive guy and you get the chance to coach the other side, absolutely do it. That 1 year as a defensive coordinator, I wasn't really excited about it when that was what I was told I was going to do, but it's been great for me, and I'd highly recommend that to anybody going forward. But anyway, we're going to jump right into the screen stuff here. So none of this is going to be groundbreaking, but just a little bit about why we do our slow screens. So I guess maybe I should clarify. We have our fast screens, which is when we just catch and throw, your typical bubbles or smoke screen, stuff like that. Slow screens are when we're going to be releasing our linemen, making it look more like a drop back pass. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So our slow screens are highly efficient and safe play for us. You can see this past season we averaged 9.6 yards per play and completed almost 80% of our slow screens, and that was on 50 total plays. We'll show you most of those tonight. It's a great way to get your playmakers the ball in space. We had some great athletes this year, and we had a smaller but pretty athletic line, and this was just a great way to get us. It's almost like an extension of our run game at times, but also provided a great answer for blitz. We'll see some clips on that. We loved it against both zone and man, especially press man. A lot of times you can get 2 for 1, and we'll show you some of that. It's a great way to protect your drop back passing game as well. As a former O-line coach, I always think about how can I protect my offensive linemen? How can I make their jobs as easy as possible? So by adding in slow screens and adding in draws, things like that, it makes it easier on your line, because for those defensive linemen now, every time their pass setting, they don't know if it's a rush or this guy's going to slip by me and get out into a screen. So it creates that hesitation for the defensive lineman, and therefore making it easier on your offensive lineman, which, as an old offensive line coach, that's what I always want to do. Now I'm stuck coaching freaking receivers, and that's just the worst. Easy to dress up with many different formations and motions, as we'll show you here in a little bit. In my opinion, it's, at least for us this year, maybe that was just the dudes we had, as you'll see on the film, but it was a very safe way for us to create explosive plays. 11 out of our 49 screens went for at least 15 yards. But it's very safe, right? You're going to complete it most of the time, as you see up here with 80%, instead of trying to throw a fade or a deep post or something like that. You're a little more efficient. So our blocking, we'll start with our outside receiver blocking. Basically, they count from outside in, and they're going to block the most outside man. So look at here, we have trips left, laser 2, so the number 1 receiver will block the most outside man. Number 2 doesn't count because he's catching the screen, so the next most outside guy will block the next most outside defender, as you can see here. And then we release our guard, center guard, which we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, but you can see the receivers are going to take out the most outside guys, and then we'll trust the linemen to get the safeties and linebackers more inside. Here's just another example. This would be twins, rocket 1. So even though number 2 is right over our number 2 receiver, our number 2 receiver is going to work out to the corner. And a lot of times what happens is, if he comes off that ball hard, which we preach, everything's a vertical until it's not with our receivers. If that receiver comes off the ball hard and then works out to number 1, he'll actually take number 2 with him, and then that'll make number 2 slow to react and set that block up for our offensive lineman coming out to make a play there. And we found pretty good success with that. Just a couple other examples. I'll show you a clip of this in our practice. It's on the left here, 4 left, laser 3. This is an great example of how it's good against 0. So you'll see on the practice film that number 4, I have the defender labeled here as 4, chases our number 4 receiver, and we actually get a 2 for 1 out of this receiver, and then this receiver here is sliding back inside of our line. Another example here, count from the outside in. Number 2 will be out, kicking out number 1. We got to get back inside of them. One thing we didn't do a great job at the beginning of the year, and you'll see me talk about this a lot, is that when we're coming out to these defenders, we always harp on attacking the inside shoulder of the defender. Okay? Because if we always want to miss to that inside shoulder, if we miss outside, he can slip over the top and get in on that play. But we want them to chase around and be chasing our guy from behind and take the long path there. So that's one thing we harp on a lot. So how do we name them? We have rockets are to our right, lasers are to our left. and we just count from the outside in. So the outside most receiver on the right would be Rocket 1. Third receiver from the left would be Laser 3. Pretty simple. Outside guys will take one step forward and then work back down line of scrimmage. If they're in the slot, they will turn and backpedal towards the sideline like they're getting ready to catch a bubble for 3 steps. Plant that foot and explode back towards the middle. I like this because they're only changing direction once. They're not running forward, coming backwards, and then turning back in. They just backpedal, and then drive forward on it, and now they're catching that ball and ready to get right up the field. So as far as our line, so this is Laser 1 and Rocket 1 again, but as far as our line, we release our guard, center, and guard. So if it's to the left, my left guard is going to work generally towards the hash, center, generally towards the post, and then the backside guard to the middle of the field. And those are just general landmarks. Obviously, they're going to kind of try and find the most dangerous man. And we learned after last spring that we got to rep that a lot more. So we repped the crap out of that this fall. And I'll show you at the end kind of how we did that. But that's those are our general aiming points for those guys anyway. So, and then we have Laser 2 and Rocket 2 again, backpedal, drive forward in. All right, so here's our first one. Like I said, we'll get right into the film. This will be Laser 1. We went empty into the boundary, so we had some numbers advantage there. Make a nice play here. One thing I want to point out on this is our right guard. Okay, he actually had a big penalty, got us a screen. This is our second round playoff game. Got a penalty for us in our first round playoff game because he tried to do a little too much. And here he just does a nice job of getting in the way. Okay, you don't have to make a crushing block out here, but he gets in the way, slows down 43 enough for our receiver to run by him. Okay, so again, you don't have to make a crushing block. Sometimes just getting in the way gives those guys coming behind him enough time to make a play. Here's a great example of it, beating the blitz, playing up at Richwoods. They had us 3rd and long. They'd been blitzing quite a bit. I think we had our freshman center in at this point because our starting center was banged up back, so we weren't picking up the pressure great. We'd also lost our left tackle in practice the week before, so we were struggling up front a little bit, getting things worked out. So we went with a blitz, we went with a screen. They brought a heavy blitz, and you can see pretty much walks into the end zone. So not that that's groundbreaking, a blitz or a screen to beat blitz, but that's what we worked there. Okay, so here our slot, he's blocking the slot. He should actually be working out to the corner here, and then letting our guard work up to this outside linebacker here. Okay, one thing is here, we don't like our guards to be look backwards. Okay, just keep this kid's turned looking backwards. Just keep working down the field. Okay, this receiver who caught the ball here runs a 4-4. No one's catching him from behind. Keep working down the field and help him out. Okay, here's an example out of empty in our quarterfinal game against Morton, where we're in a decent spot, but we run by somebody, right? We have our guard and center both working up to this safety, and we're leaving this linebacker completely untouched, okay? We try and harp on never run past a different colored jersey, but we do that here. Again, even with missing the middle linebacker, we still gain 4 yards. So I think that just kind of shows, again, that these are pretty safe plays here for the most part. Again, this is our second round playoff game back against Triad. Nothing fancy here, but pretty dang easy 10 yards. Pitch and catch, get in behind your big guys, get a nice little 10-yard gain there. So this one was a poor call by me. As you can see, this was week 8. It was pretty nasty here in Central Illinois. Field was a mud pit, as you can tell by Matt Toon's jerseys here, so they were kind of loading the box. Probably should have thrown a quick screen or something like that here, but you can see we kind of run into this outside backer because he's not really too concerned about the pass. Here's a good example of why we like it against man. This was over at Quincy, Notre Dame. They're playing 2-man. They're pressing us up. Our slot doesn't do a great job here. We'd like to see him attack this inside shoulder as I talked about earlier. But you can see if he does get that block here, we get a 2-for-1 with both these DBs. Okay, so he's going to let him get over the top. If he seals this inside shoulder, you can see how this other DB, the guy covering our slot, is now out of the picture, not able to make a play. Okay, and even with him whiffing, our guard should still make the play, and we should have a big play, but their kid did a nice job of avoiding our blockers. But again, we had two of our guys miss the same defender, and we still picked up 8 yards. So if you got guys who can make plays in space, again, this is just a great way to get them the ball out in space and let them work. Here's another example of, unfortunately, one of our slots letting the corner get over the top of us. Now, I just saw this kid signed with Illinois State today, Christian, I'm going to say his name wrong. I don't even want to butcher it. Kia from Mount Zion, I think is how you say it, but I'm probably wrong there. But he was a stud. We tried to avoid him most of the night, but he made a great play here. But anyway, again, we try and emphasize to our kids, attack that outside shoulder, make them run the loop, okay? Make them run the long way around and chase us from behind. Now, he was fast enough, he probably would have been able to make it, but I'd still like to see us make him make that play instead of letting him cross our face and take the short route. All right, here we are against Effingham, slow screen, okay? Again, this is a similar issue to what I talked about earlier from our triad game, but here's us doing it incorrectly. So our right guard comes out, and he gets a little too aggressive here. I appreciate that he's being aggressive, but we can't miss the block, right? And he overruns it. If he just kind of breaks down, plays basketball defense, sets a screen, whatever you want to call it, gets in the way, okay, our kid is probably going to get a bigger game. But we overrun him and miss, and then he does the cardinal sin, right? He turns around and he's chasing him backwards and runs into our own receiver, okay? We cannot turn and chase backwards. If you miss, you miss. Don't turn it into 2 mistakes, right? Just keep working down the field, because Dream actually makes the defender miss, but our own offensive lineman runs into him. Always love to see that as an offensive coordinator, don't we? Here's another example. This is against Morton in the quarters. This is Seth Glatz, one of the best high school players I've ever seen. Had 46 carries for almost 400 yards against us and caused a bunch of issues rushing the passer. So we tried to run a bunch of screens in this game. You can see we have this one set up pretty well, but we just missed the throw. But you can see how we have good numbers, right? We're here. We got our guard coming up. We actually have guard and center on this backer, right? This is our 4-4 kid. If he catches this, this is a big-time play. So we'll talk about it again at the end, but trying to get your quarterback as many reps as possible with the ball, with somebody in his face when he's delivering those is important, okay? Because these, we can't miss on these, right? We have to have these, because this is a big explosive play in a playoff game that we lost that we would love to have back. Here's another example of against Morton, catching that, and he just floats a little bit. Again, still 8 yards, a nice little gain here, but I'd like to see him catch. And we talk about finding the center's butt. We had a really good athletic center this year, Braden Smith. He did a great job, and that's usually where we wanted to cut it right off of, was finding that center's butt and getting up the field. Unfortunately, Quentin, and he did a lot of great things for us this year, but he floats a little bit here. If he cuts us right up the field, I think we get a little better gain. But again, even with not perfect execution, still a nice, easy 8-yard gain for us. I'm going to go to the end zone camera here. Earlier, I talked about how this is great if you don't have a bunch of big road graders, you've got smaller athletic kids. Our right tackle here is a kid who played soccer his first 2 years here at Mahomet. Played linebacker for us as a junior. We had our starting right tackle moved to Tennessee for his dad's job and found out the last week of July. And so we took this kid, former soccer player, moved him from linebacker to right tackle. He started for us all year and did a nice job. And so again, this just goes to show how you can kind of use this stuff to your advantage and use some of your, if you have a smaller, more athletic kids, try and take advantage of that. But one of the issues was he didn't have a whole lot of experience. So he kind of lets his kids, gets his hands up and knock it down. Again, we always want to punish those guys, punish those jumpers who get those hands up, right? especially if you're a big screen team, that's something that you're going to want to emphasize with your offensive linemen. You should only let defensive linemen do that to you once. Here's another example. Over at Quincy Notre Dame, they're playing man. You can see we get a pretty good 2-for-1 here. If my guard comes out flatter, this is probably a touchdown. He gets a little too far upfield. And actually, this slot does a decent job of not getting 2-for-1 here. But my guard should be flatter here. I'm kicking this kid out. I'd have my center up to backer, and my guard will be releasing here. And again, this could have been a real nice play. Still should have caught it. Oh, he did catch it, excuse me. But we didn't get much after the catch here. Okay, but again, you can see my guard should be flatter because my center's got no one to block because my guard stole his guy. Here's another example. This is straight up cover 0. They're bringing the house. Just another example, trying to get that quarterback as many different reps and angles and throwing with somebody in his face with tons of pressure, backpedaling, throwing as many different ways and funky ways that we can to hit these screens, right? Because most of the time, or I shouldn't say most of the time, a lot of the times you're going to be calling these into blitz, right? And it's not going to be a perfect, clean pocket for him to take his time and just picture perfect practice on air rep, right? So the more we can make him throw uncomfortably in practice, the better we'll be in the game. Because this easily could have been a touchdown here, but we just miss on the throw, right? I mean, look at that. Got a huge alley sealed up, ready to take off. Camera got caught a little late here, but I think this is just empty left, rocket 1. Our slot takes out the corner. We got linemen all over the place downfield, okay? Again, our center kind of breaks the cardinal rule here. Turns around and starts looking back. Just keep working downfield. Keep working downfield. Okay? Again, Quentin is a pretty special player out here at receiver. Coach Albaugh asked me to speak. I told him it's going to be pretty short. Find as many ways to get your 4-4 kid the ball as possible. So that's what we try to do a lot on these screens with Quentin. As you can see, he's got pretty good speed there. Again, our right guard here is getting too far upfield. If he stays flat, he can get to the safety and let Quentin get inside of it and get up the field. But he gets too far upfield and we don't get a block on him. But you can see a decent job on the outside of our receivers. Number 2 goes out to the corner. We get him picked up. Number 3 goes to the next guy outside. And then again, we should have our guard to this safety, but we're too far upfield. I've kind of found as the year went on that I like to run in rocket and laser 1 more to the boundary, just because that it seemed to time up better for those guys coming all the way from the outside to get back inside of our linemen. And this is one where we ran it to the field, and it should have been okay, but our guard just has to take a better path. Look at the end zone here. Again, earlier we talked about finding the center's butt. If we kind of cut up after the first guy, if we just carry this in a little farther right, so I got my guard out to the nickel, my center's on the backer. If we just bring this a little further inside, I think we got a bigger play, but he cuts it up a little too quick. We allow that linebacker to make a play. If we go back to the wide shot, right, my center he's coached up to wait for this kid to come back and then block him out. So he's not going to be able to get around almost like a reach block. He's waiting for him to come back, and he's almost setting a pick. Okay, and so we should be catching this ball and right off that center's butt and up the field. Help those linemen out by making their blocks a little easier. Here we're at midfield. This is just shows you a pretty good example of how the slot gets to back up and then basically be running forward and get up to full speed pretty easily. And we like how that just sets up a little better than trying to get upfield, come back, and then get turned back up the field. Okay, so nice little screen here. Bloomington had a stud defensive end, probably the best defensive lineman we saw all year right here. I think it was 51. He caused us issues all night, but they were playing off on the outside because we had 2 pretty good receivers. So we were able to hurt him a few times with the screen game. Again, pretty nice job by our offensive lineman here. Center doesn't get a crushing blow. Right guard doesn't get a crushing blow, but they do enough to spring our guy for a nice gain. Here's kind of a bad example. Got our sophomore slot after our starting running back got hurt. We move one of our slots to running back and then play a sophomore. Great kid, great effort for us. Just didn't have quite enough junk in the trunk at times. But anyway, here he is trying to take on this slot on a slow screen. We'd like to see him work a little more, stay on this upfield shoulder, right? He's in good position. He kind of panics and tries to cover him up instead of staying on that upfield shoulder. We don't care if he chases this way, right? Because my receiver out here is running full speed back inside. If this kid gets around and chases from behind and makes that tackle, so be it. But most of the time, he's going to make the play by crossing our face and getting back in that way. So this is actually from the spring. This is against Effingham. They almost always bring at least 5, sometimes 6 when you go empty. So we felt like we could hurt them with the screen game when we did this. So we got 4 right, rocket 3. So they bring 5. Two of our linemen barely block anybody. One of them falls down, trips on a defensive lineman, and we still get 23 yards. Okay, so this was a great way for us, almost eliminating the second level defenders, right? We knew they were going to blitz, they were going to go man outside, and so this was a good play for us to take on that, try and take advantage of that man coverage. I'm going to show you the end zone here again. This was that game where we played our freshman a little bit. So he's playing at center. He gets out real late, but you can see if he gets out on time, this would have been a nice big play, right? So we got our center working out, or excuse me, our left guard working out. My center should be right here on this path now working to this safety. My right guard has this backside backer, and we would have had a big play here. But freshmen are going to freshman, so he didn't quite get out on time. Here's another example where our kid's in good position to start. He just needs to stay on that inside shoulder, but he lets that kid cross his face. No, he doesn't make the play, but he should have been there to make the play on him. Again, here's Effingham. They were blitzing us a decent amount in this game. Look for a screen. There we drop it, but again, you can see this is going to be set up for a nice big explosive play if we just run through and catch. We got all this room. We got the linemen set up, working their way out. All right, here's another example. Trips right, rocket 2. Dropping into our sophomore. Again, nothing crazy, but that's about as easy as 10 yards you can get. Here again, our right guard doesn't quite get out flat enough to pick this kid up like he should. But again, this is part of why we love screens, is because if you have the playmakers on the outside, we're just getting this kid the ball in space, and now the defender has to make a one-on-one tackle with no help around him, right? It's completely different than making a one-on-one tackle in the box where you got people coming to help. There's nowhere near as many defenders here to help him out. So he makes the kid miss. We pick up 15 yards, even though we weren't perfect on the blocking. Here's an example. Again, I've showed you this a couple times, but we like to go 4 right. Okay, again, pull more people out of the box a little bit, and then drop our receivers back in with those linemen releasing downfield after we've pulled the people out of the box. Obviously, we dropped this one here, unfortunately. But you can see if we catch this, it's set up pretty nice, right? We got our center on that backer. We got guard and tackle. We're off to the races if we catch this. Here's an example from last year, or in the spring. Just, again, try and get our guys to not run by different colored jerseys. That sounds simple. And again, that's part of why we introduced so in the spring, when we would do our screen period in practice, we always went against air, and I'll show you what we did at the end of the year, or at the end of this presentation, what we did this year. But we would just take our the backup linemen, backup running backs, set them out there, give us a look of what the defense is going to do. And they didn't really know what they were doing. We just told them to try and rush the quarterback like crazy. And that way they at least gave us a look for for these guys to practice against and get reps against. But again, playmaker in space, makes a kid miss, get some nice yardage there. All right, here's an example from our practice. If you've watched Coach Atkins, he talked about using the drone, so you're getting to see some of that footage here. We never ran this in a game, but when we do war drill or goal line drill against our starting defense, we like to go screens down here because they would bring 6 constantly. And so again, but what you'll be able to see here is we get a 2-for-1 because this kid and this kid are both going to go with our tailback working out here. And Nolan our number 3 receiver slips right underneath. And we get that 2-for-1 since they're playing man down here. Get them both out of there, catch it. Need a little better block from our number 2 receiver again. He lets him cross his face, but he's got to try and work to that inside shoulder so that that doesn't happen. He knows where the ball's going. He's got to get himself between the defender and where the ball's going. Another example of it, 44 laser 3. Okay. This is one of our defensive linemen. We were trying to work him in at guard because we had a few injuries. You can see he doesn't quite release like he's supposed to. But again, sometimes down the goal line you just need a little bit. You can see again, our number 4 receiver blocks both of these guys by himself, right? Or maybe not blocks them, but takes them out of the play because they're trying to play man there. All right, here's some examples of how we kind of dressed it up. This was against Jacksonville in the first round of the playoffs. Pretty much stole this play from Sacred Heart Griffin. When Jacksonville, it seemed like, and maybe we just got lucky, but it seemed like when you went in motion, they would bring this outside backer. So with that, we thought we would go in motion, give a play action fake to hold the backers, and then, again, throw it out to our fast kid. Here in the playoffs, we started to release our right tackle as well. We just called it Rocket 1 Extra because we were sending an extra guy out there. Like we said, he's that former soccer player. So he was athletic enough to get out here and break down on these corners, and it just allowed us to get 1 extra guy out there. We liked doing that to the single side when we knew we were going to get off coverage. Okay, and that would allow him to take care of that corner. If they were pressed, obviously we're not going to want to do that, but when we knew we would get him off, we would send him out there. Here's another example of us running that in the quarters against Morton. Again, they had to respect Quentin and his speed out here, and Seth was the Glatz kid was blitzing a bunch off the backside. So we liked how we had this set up. Let George get up to the corner. Our right tackle will let Seth blitz us, and then get it to Quentin in space and let him run. Here's another example. George, our right tackle, chops his feet here a little bit. I'd like to see him keep working and close down this space so that Quentin can kind of hit this gap. And I think Quentin needs to hit this gap a little faster. Again, he's kind of looking to dance a little bit, but not bad overall. So here's just another example of us bringing the motion across. That lets us set up that block on the corner. Again, this is against our scout team. So we're not necessarily getting a great look here, but Smitty does a nice job. And Nolan, that's our center. Nolan does a nice job of finding that center's butt like we talked about and getting behind the center. Get behind him, let him make that block, and then get up the field. All right, here's another one. Here we're going to start showing you just how some of the motions and stuff that we dress it up with. Send that jet. Fake the swing. Again, this is another example where Quentin floats it a little bit. I'd like to see him catch and get up that field, right? Find the center, get right behind him, and get vertical. Overall, not a bad play, though. Here, Quentin gets a little too deep. And so you can see the line of scrimmage is up here. He's about 3 or 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. We try and keep him right at the line of scrimmage, if not a little bit behind it. The week before, we got called for an illegal man downfield, and so I think he was probably overcorrecting a little bit too much because he kind of caught it a little bit past the line, even though I'll show you here in a little bit that was a bad call, as they all are, right, when they're against us. But you can see he gets a little too deep, and big old nose tackle gets in his way because he wasn't rushing super hard. Just another example, jet the motion out, pull another guy out of the box. You can see my right guard needs to be a little flatter here to knock this kid out. Okay, but again, that was his first game starting for us after we lost one of our starting linemen in practice that week. Again, you got another example of motion here. We got the jet motion out of the backfield. Throw the screen back the other way and let Quentin show his speed. So again, this is another example where we were taking advantage of blitz and tendencies. Lincoln was blitzing us heavily on 2nd and long. So we thought we had a pretty good shot of hitting a screen against them on 2nd and long. Again, right guard misses here, but they've blitzed most of their guys out of that middle of the field. So Quentin gets a chance to get going. It's usually over when he gets a chance to get going. Here's a bad example. Again, we throw outside receiver screen to a single side. We tried to draw them with the motion this way and then hit Dream underneath, but he just gets into a little bit of a hurry here. Got to be a little more patient to give his line a chance to get out. See, we get kind of a collision here. So he's just got to slow down a little bit. Again, we didn't do a whole lot of throwing it to the single side. So that's probably my fault for not repping that enough in practice and getting him some reps on what that looks like when he's the only guy over there. This is back to the spring again. This is just, again, another example of we blocked it poorly. Right, our line, we got 2 guys on this kid and then nobody on that linebacker. Okay, so he comes up and makes a play, but even with us missing the middle linebacker on a screen play, we still pick up 4 yards. So again, just goes to show, or trying to show how safe these plays are, in my opinion. If you catch the ball, you're usually going to get a nice little gain. Okay, bring a motion across, throw it out here. Again, we need our guards to be a little flatter here. Again, this was back in the spring. We got a lot better at it. But we got to do a better job of getting them to understand that these backers are initially going to chase outward because that's where it looks like the ball's going. So they got to anticipate where they're going, right? We talk about that. It's like you're hunting, right? You don't shoot where the duck is, you shoot out in front of the duck. Okay? But he's not flat enough, and then he can't make the play on that kid. Again, here's some practice film for us. We put this formation in against Jacksonville. So we threw some bubble out of it like this. And so this kid would be blocking here. And as soon as this kid started to overcommit, we knew that we could then run our 44 back underneath, our Rocket 3. So that's what you're going to see here is Rocket 3 coming back underneath. So we want to make it look like it's the bubble, get that kid wide, and then come back underneath. Again, should have found that center's butt. Come right off of his backside and get up the field. Don't let this kid make a play here. Come right off his butt, keep working up the field. Okay, here we have the motion. Throwing it back inside. Don't do a great job blocking there. We used a lot of that motion to try and pull somebody outside the box and then throw it back underneath. Here's a good example. Get the jet motion. We didn't really even get anyone to go with him pre-snap, but you can see 32 goes late, goes post-snap, pull him right out of where the danger zone would be of where we're going. We got great effort from our guys downfield blocking. One of the things I loved about Quentin, he runs a 4-4, but he's not too good to block either. Him and Dream, our other outside receiver, were excellent blockers for us on the outside this year. Here we go with a little motion to try and pull somebody that way, throw it back. Again, Peggle has to stay on this, our slot receiver here has to stay on this upfield shoulder. Okay? Overemphasize it. Get up here, get your hips turned and facing him and pinning him in. So the only way he can go is to chase around out or back and around. Again, when we have Quentin, no one's catching him from behind. Make guys try and catch him from behind, and we're going to be in good shape. Here's a little play, kind of a 2-play series that we set up with our slow screens. Again, kind of that similar motion we just showed you. We throw the swing screen out to him now. This is what we would call one of our fast screens. We need a better block from our slot here. He should be trying to get the outside. So Quentin, can just catch and run to the outside. The reason I show you that, though, is we're setting up the next play. Very similar formation. Sending our slot in motion to the wide side. We're going to pump that to him. And then we have Rocket 2 coming back underneath. Okay, catches it. He's gone. Incorrect illegal man downfield call. As Quentin catches it. My left guard is exactly 3 yards downfield. And they're too busy not seeing our center get dragged down by his face mask inside, but they could call the incorrect illegal man downfield call. So anyway, we got that called back. But you can see, you get the idea, right? That you can kind of dress this up, set some things up, and then kind of hit them back with the answer of that slow screen, right? So we're trying to make that swing screen, give that look again, pump it, but then throw back inside after you're trying to get the linebackers flown out to that swing that we hit them with a little bit earlier. Here's just another way we dressed it up. Brought some deep motion, pump it this way, and then throw it back to our H-back inside. I would probably change it to have our H-back kind of go towards the second pump, because we get this kid at first, but then by the time we pump this other one and come back, he's able to come back and make the play. We also don't do a great job blocking this, but just another way that you can kind of dress it up. If you have an athlete at an H-back or a tight end who's good with the ball in his hands, you can get them the ball, right? We just called that H-laser because it was to our H-back and going left. You obviously go Y, T, whatever. All right, so then we have our shot tag. We will give the screen look, but then run a screen and go. We mostly use this off our fast screens, but occasionally use it on our slow screens as well. Whoever normally runs the screen fakes the screen, then they'll turn into a drag as an outlet. We hit that against Bloomington. But then everybody else will fake whoever they would normally block and then explode down the field. We were running a bunch of screens against Mattoon because it was a pretty nasty night, trying to get those shorter throws. So they were starting to come up aggressively, and we came out in the second half. First play of the drive, and we had clean hands and a clean ball. Called Rocket 2 shot, and you can see safety bites up, and we hit a big play over the top. A little underthrown, but still get the completion, change the field a little bit for us. Got in our heavy package and punched it in to take the lead in that game. Here's another example. We tried to run laser 1 shot. Doesn't really work, but you can see Dream keeps working across on the drag. We hit him, end up getting 15 yards out of it, even though that's not what we were looking for. But it's always nice to have that built-in answer if things go awry, right? He could just stand there, but we had him coached up to run the drag. And they keep going and make a play for us. All right, so we're going to talk about our tailback screens now. We didn't do a great job of these. We mostly worked our receiver screens, and part of the reason is we tried to keep our blocking the same on these for our linemen. Again, I talked about trying to make things as easy as possible. So we messed with this a little bit, and I'll show you what we tried to do. It wasn't as great, but I think we had it kind of more figured out at the end of the year. But anyway, so our line's doing the exact same thing. Our T is lasers to the left still, T rockets to the right. They're going to step up like they're pass blocking, slip out. We set about 4 or 5 yards outside the tackle. I have him drawn a little too deep here. 1 or 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he's going to catch it, but then he's working back inside because our line are blocking it just like the receiver screen. Okay, so we were trying to keep it as simple as possible for our offensive linemen. So we want to give them that same action where they think they're blocking out. So we get our receiver to catch it out here and then work his way back in. So we'll show you a few clips of that. This is early in the year against Lincoln. Again, they were blitzed this heavy on 2nd and long. So there wasn't much for our guys there to block. Our tailback does a nice job there. This is against Matt Toon. Again, you can see we overthrow it a little bit, and part of the problem here is if he gets out a little wider, okay, it's an easier throw for our quarterback. When he hangs in the middle, he's got to throw it over a lot of junk, okay? But if he gets out wide, catches it here, and now he's working back in as all of our line are working to block to him or to his defenders. So again, here's an example of a little later in the year. This is our backup. Our starter had gotten hurt, so this is a kid we had to move from slot. So he catches it, and you can see right now the linemen are set up great for one of our receiver screens, right? If we got a kid working back inside, it's great. So this is where we were trying to get our tailbacks to now catch it and work back inside so that those lineman blocks are set up more easily for him. So it's kind of different than your normal tailback slip screen, but it wasn't perfect, but we were trying to keep it as simple as possible for our offensive linemen. So then we told him that was week 9. This is week 10, first round of the playoffs. We tell him, okay, we got to work back inside, but he goes right to the inside. And so now those guys are right on top of him, where if he catches out here, this kid's chasing to him, and now he can work back inside of his lineman blocks. So here you start to see it a little bit better. He starts to work out. So we're not set up perfectly, but the line, you can see that the line are chasing this way, right? And so now our offensive lineman can come on their same paths, and he can cut off of them and make a play. And great job by our backside receivers not giving up on the play, letting us get a big conversion backed up towards the end of the first half of our second round playoff game. But again, this is a little bit more of what it's supposed to look like. Get out a little wider, try and pull those linebackers with you, and then work back underneath of them with your line coming in to block them. A little different, again, than your traditional tailback screen, but just trying to keep it simple and the same as our wide receiver screens for our offensive line. Here's one week 9 against Bloomington. Again, catch it. Line does a nice job. Nolan makes a nice run after the play. Here's something we put in for Quincy Notre Dame. We knew they had some tendency to show some two-man. So basically, we were going to block 4 for 4 up front on the line and then release our center up to their Mike backer and block him. Our tailback just gets in a little bit of a hurry here, and we don't make a perfect pass and we drop it. But so we called this T-Rocket special, trying to take advantage of that two-man. You can see if we do complete this, though, we got the center on the mic, and we got a lot of space to run after it. Here it is in practice again from the drone footage. This is what we were hoping it would look like, but obviously it's always easier against your scout team than the other team's starting defense. You can see center doesn't need a great block, just needs to get in the way. And then if it's two-man, you got a ton of open room in the middle now. So we called that T-Rocket special. Not really a slow screen, but kind of just a variation that we tried to run. Next, we have our dribble tag, so double dribble. So you have a double option here. So we can call laser one dribble. So we have our laser one screen. Our back nose, he's going in that bullet motion or push motion, whatever you want to call it. And if no one matches him, our quarterback catches and throws to him. If they match him with motion, then we're throwing the screen back the other way. We kind of set up the dribble here, okay, with jet motion, or what we call our jet motion, throw it out to him. Again, another good way to get our playmaker the ball in space. Another example of it here against Charleston. Great job of blocking by receivers out on the edge. So here is one of our dribbles. Okay, so we have T-laser dribble. Okay, so this kid starts to widen with the motion here, so we should probably throw that 17 back. But regardless, we needed a better block from our slot here. There was a little confusion there. But you can see up to the top, our line's releasing, and they're getting ready to set up that T-laser back the other way. Here's an example of laser one dribble. So we got the motion to the top. This linebacker matches him. So we throw the quick screen back underneath. Unfortunately, we drop it. Way too common of a theme tonight, I guess. But you can see how that pulled an extra man out of the box. How if we can catch this, we have pretty good numbers here. We got 3 linemen for 2 linebackers. Here's another example, rocket one dribble. No one matches, so we throw the swing. Got a poor block from our receiver right here. He's got to work to that outside shoulder. But just another example, you can see how back here to the boundary, we've got it set up so these guys are releasing. 17's coming in to catch the ball. All right, so last thing here, again, this was our screen period in practice. So we'd get as many of our backups as out there as we could. 3-2, 4-4, whatever the defense ran. I would be out here as one of these. Usually our running backs coach or our line coach would be over here. Our O-line coach would be telling the defenders in here what blitz he wanted to see, what he wanted them to do. And then the other coach and I would be able to work making these kids kind of break down and block out in space. And we just try and get them as many reps. And it wasn't fully live, but it was much better than just on air of them kind of figuring out who they got to work to and how they got to work together and talk that out in terms of getting those blocked up correctly. I tried. We didn't have any drone footage of that, unfortunately, but I think that if you want to run a lot of these screens and work at this, I think you should definitely incorporate that in. Last year, we only ran it on air, and you could see on a lot of those clips last year, our guys struggled at making those blocks in space and knowing who to go to and where to go to. And we felt like we were a lot better at it this year because of that drill. Here's my contact info again. If you have any questions or anything, you can shoot me an email or reach out to me on Twitter. I'd be happy to talk with you. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you learned something.